in New York, there's like 17,000 bridges, something like that. Only about 17 of those bridges are not in need of immediate repairs. The reality is, it's actually quite hard to know what bridges are the most high priority. So the best way to understand that is you actually go out and collect the information in data sets. And typically this is done by humans, by the way. The information and data that's being fed into whatever someone is claiming to be an artificial intelligence system, it's coming off of a person on a rope that is taking 100 ultrasonic readings, similar to how you do an ultrasound for a pregnancy. They're putting that on a piece of paper and then claiming that they know exactly where they took that data and that the data was correct. Me and you can obviously tell that's very limited information and data, and also it's not interrogated. All our systems and data is so woefully prepared to leverage the technology is simply that fact. And so I think where robotics and artificial intelligence meet beautifully is this convergence of the physical and digital worlds to begin to unlock ways that artificial intelligence can actually benefit me and you every single day outside of just a chat assistant. If you want to talk about governance and decision making, high fidelity data is the way to accomplish that. So that's the world I want to live in.
Welcome to Meet the Leader. I am Linda Lucina, and I am very excited to welcome Jake Lusarian here. He is the CEO of startup Gecko Robotics, and that is a startup that he built up to a 9-figure business. And he is going to talk to us a little bit about the process of building that, but also something a little bit more interesting and important, the fact that we can improve the way that we do data collection so that we can better leverage AI in the future and also improve big problems like the net zero transition and infrastructure. How are you, Jake?
I'm fantastic.
So why don't we get started, and why don't we just talk a little bit about data collection? If you can set the stage for us, what is the state of data collection for AI right now?
Such a broad question. Well, I'll speak specifically to a more pragmatic vantage, I guess, and that's in the world of, let's say, like physical world things, atoms. The world that we rely on every day, whether it's in the manufacturing sector or the energy sector, the military sector, these kinds of sectors. When I think about the most impactful things that artificial intelligence will do as it relates to things outside of asking ChatGPT how to make the best sticky toffee pudding or something like that. It's actually, how does it drive industry, both environmental, how does it drive efficiencies? How does it meet the moment as it relates to energy and AI infrastructure that's going to define the next 10 years? And then how does it affect things like robotics? This year's been labeled the year of the robot. And that's been, it's an exciting moment where software and hardware are merging once again. But I think what is very clear to me is that the state of the world as it relates to the data that we have as it relates to these sectors is woefully unprepared for the technologies like optimizations and LLMs, simply because we just don't have enough high fidelity data as it relates to the world in the atomic world. So the physical world, we don't actually know how reliable we should be expecting our grid to be, how reliable our bridge or dams are to environmental changes, for example, or new loads. There's a lot of information that you need to be able to have smart infrastructure, to be able to build AI infrastructure correctly, and ensure reliability for people like me and you.
And there's gaps in the data that we collect. Can you give us a sense of what those gaps are? What's contributing to this problem?
Yeah, so let's take an example like a bridge. In New York, there's like 17,000 bridges, something like that. It probably surprised people in New York to know that only about 17 of those bridges are not in need of immediate repairs. Now you might question, like, wow, that's crazy to understand a reality like that. I wonder what we're doing about it. And the reality is it's actually quite hard to know what bridges are the most important ones to fix, which ones are the most high priorities in terms of environmental or loads that are going to change that we should be spending more or less on. And so you begin to wonder, like, how is AI helping me there? And I think that's where you have to begin to question, when people talk about how AI will change the world, well, will it really? And how can it when we don't even know how safe a bridge is, for example? Like, that's a very practical example that me and you will experience every single day. It's a really real world example. And so the best way to understand that is you actually go out and collect the information in data sets. And typically this is done by humans, by the way, as it relates to the health of structures like a bridge. Now, once you have that, amazing. Now you can do some really cool stuff with artificial intelligence and software and model it in interesting ways and, figure out how to take a D infrastructure grade in the US to a B. But you don't have that information. And so I think where robotics and artificial intelligence meet beautifully is this convergence of the physical and digital worlds to begin to unlock ways that artificial intelligence can actually benefit me and you every single day outside of just a chat assistant.
How would AI be fed the wrong information? Is there a tool that maybe would be looking at bridges or sort of helping city leaders or municipal agencies or things like that? What would that be, and what sort of problems would come down the line with this bridge example, maybe?
Sure. So for the bridge example, the information and data that's being fed into whatever someone is claiming to be an artificial intelligence system, it's coming off of a person on a rope that is taking 100 ultrasonic readings, similar to how you do an ultrasound for a pregnancy. And they're putting that on a piece of paper and then claiming that they know exactly where they took that data and that the data was correct. They might take 100 readings out of a potential amount of damage area of miles. So me and you can obviously tell that's very limited information and data, and also it's not interrogated. You can't interrogate if the data was actually correct. And so, I mean, one practical example of artificial intelligence and how our systems and data is so woefully prepared to leverage the technology is simply that fact. With robotics, you can actually gather millions, terabytes of information and data, visual, ultrasonic, LiDAR. And that's what like robots that Gecko creates and integrates does. And then you can digitally represent a world, the physical world, inside of a software platform we call Cantilever, a data platform, to begin to understand how do I deploy the $1 billion that I have to ensure that the bridge doesn't collapse when a mother and her kids are commuting over that bridge that day. Now, this example applies to so many different sectors. You just look outside your window and you see buildings that are that hopefully won't collapse. Maybe there's refineries that have explosions or tanks that leak oil into rivers, or all these things contribute to something that me and my team plaster on our walls, and that is there's 18% impact in the US alone on emissions because things just fail when they're not supposed to. If you can eliminate things failing when they're not supposed to, 18% by 2030 is the environmental impact you can have. Why aren't we all talking about that? That is something that doesn't take a investment of 10 years of new technology that may or may not exist, and it's just using robotics and artificial intelligence that we've built today. And so I want to live in a world where you never get surprised by the physical world failing you at the worst times.
And just to dig in on that 18% number for folks, so they can illustrate it, we can illustrate it for them. Because they're surprised, maybe they might have to rebuild a building or a bridge or something entirely as opposed to repair it over time, leading to excess construction emissions and things like that. Is that what you're getting at?
No, that's not even taking into consideration that. It's things like, every single day you can, if you want to, you can actually find some report about somewhere in the world where there's a pipeline explosion at some oil and gas facility, or there's oil leaking from some crude oil tank into a river or into some sediment. There's a bridge collapsing, a dam failing. It's these types of things that end up leading to the 18% that was put out by Row Impact was the group doing the study. That number is quite higher when you begin to think about the things that you're discussing.
And we'll get into Gecko and how you guys are helping to sort of solve this problem. But what generally, globally, is sort of just slowing answers to this and slowing the application of robotics to these issues?
Outside of the complexities of robotics, which are quite large, I'm an electrical engineering background, so I've been working on robots for a couple decades, and so outside of the complexities of building actuators that are very very fine motor, they're doing like things like just moving your hands, those are like really tough engineering problems. But outside of the complexities of robotics, and the cost of robotics. It is, what is the robot doing that actually helps benefit and justify some new way of operating, whether it's operating how I'm doing chores at my home, or it's operating a facility that's manufacturing or mining, and anywhere in between. We talk about a world maybe where Optimus and other humanoid robots are, doing things like folding our laundry and like taking our kids to school. And while that's an exciting opportunity to a new paradigm to live in, my goodness, can you justify spending $30,000 on something that, I already have a washing machine. I can hire help. I can do it myself. It's so I think the real question comes down to, for me, um, how can you get ROI from robotics? And the most clear way is to reduce death, reduce lack of efficiencies and mistakes in some of the most critical industries. And when I talk about this, I talk about you need a data platform that can actually put to use humanoids and mobile robots, the things that we build, for example, at Gecko, but also the things that other companies like Tesla and Figure will build. Um, I am so excited for a world where robotics is affecting and impacting our lives. I just believe that it should be affecting and impacting our lives behind the scenes, um, especially because I'm still a little bit scared of a robot in my house walking around that might turn on me. So for the most part, I think that's where it comes down to for me. Can you get a high enough ROI out of a robot to justify the shift in the way that you operate day to day, the trust that you need to put in that robot, and also the things that it can actually do. And all those sensors are such amazing technologies that gather physical world data and convert them into bits. The question is, how do you turn those bits into useful bits that drive some new efficiency at a power plant, for example, that reduces the chance of an explosion that could be horrible for the environment or for the people that are operating it and could kill them? These are the ways that I think robotics and AI will transform fundamentally our world, and we actually need them to, because we're at a place where we don't have enough humans to actually do this, because those humans, they're so incredibly skilled, and most of them are retiring.
So, can you tell me a little bit about Gecko Robotics and the problem that it's solving?
Sure. So a lot of things I've been describing are very much in line with what Gecko was built for. I started the company because I was got the opportunity to go to a power plant when I was in college and see firsthand how power was made inside of a power plant boiler, which is a place that gets really hot and turns water into steam. And the engineering manager that was running the facility said, this power plant is shut down 40% of the year because the physical structures just fail and we don't know how to stop them from failing. And the only way to stop them from failing that they tried was sending a human that was dangling 100 feet up in the air, gathering pictures and using an ultrasonic sensor to look at the structural integrity of steel. Whoa, that's crazy. And guess what? That human, the year before, fell and died in the very spot I was standing in. And so I was just floored by the problem. And I wondered, what else around us do we rely on every single day that might just fail us? I don't know the health of the built world. And I really want to figure that out, because it could unlock something, quite extraordinary. So now what we've done is, we've had now 500,000 assets that we've gathered information and data on that are modeled inside of our data platform called Cantilever. And Cantilever is where all the robot data goes. We use machine learning and localization and automation with the robotics to get the data, localize it, and clean it so that it's highest fidelity to build foundational models off of that can predict when things will fail and how to make them operate most efficiently and effectively for some of the biggest companies in the world, whether that be in the mining sector, the metals sector, the energy sector, the military sector, the public infrastructure sector. We're there. And we're gathering all this information and data to not just figure out how to make things more reliable and run more efficiently, because we're gathering operational data too, but we're also figuring out how to build smarter things.
Tell us a little bit about, so if this was going to be deployed somewhere, what are the steps that happens when you guys are, so to help us understand exactly sort of how the technology works and how it's applied?
Yeah, so a customer will say, "Hey, we want to deploy your technology stack across let's say they've got a couple thousand assets. We're gonna try out for 50 of those assets. Maybe they're piping, and maybe they're a digester, maybe they're distillation towers. All these different types of tools. Maybe they're sides of ships or bridges. We'll deploy out robotics that we are determining are collecting the data layers, which we call them, the data layers that will help us construct a digital twin of that structure inside of Cantilever. And then we're going to layer on information as it relates to the metadata on that asset, when it was made, who made it, all the different materials that were part of the construction, along with what is the health of it by doing a complete sonogram, basically, a complete test of the integrity of that. And we're going to save all the acoustic signals that come with that. We're going to save all the visual images that we're taking in videos, which is another data layer. We're going to take all the LiDAR data that helps stitch together those images to create a beautiful model to be able to look at that looks real. We're going to add thermal imaging. We're going to add a couple different things that all are really important to be able to understand how to get the best performance and longevity out of those assets. And we're going to help the customer with all this information be able to determine if they need to deploy capital to make that asset not fail, or could that asset, if you repair in strategic locations, make that asset last 10 to 20 to 30 years longer than it ever should have, which helps their bottom line and the margin, for example, of how much it costs to produce something. We're going to help optimize and say you can actually run at higher loads without potentially causing a huge catastrophic failure, because we know what the effects will be using artificial intelligence on the asset. If you want to be able to produce more power, because guess what? Everyone's really cold and everyone's using power, and you need it to ensure there's no blackouts or brownouts. We can do that while also ensuring that there's a risk calculation associated with that. That has never been possible before without the data that we've collected. And so when we talk about optimizations in AI changing everything, in the back of my head, I'm thinking it won't change a damn thing unless you have the information that we're collecting, that funny enough we're the only ones doing.
Are there examples of disasters that Gecko has helped to prevent? Because you guys have been able to give somebody a little bit better information on something to fix.
Yes, two examples. One is a distillation tower at a refinery, which 60% of a company, a refinery's product will run through that. There was micro cracks inside of one of the columns that we were able to determine and tell the customer, and they didn't believe it because no one had ever said that, but told them that before. And if we were to stop them, they would take down some of their production. And so we re-verified and reran all of our algorithms and said this is actually a really big problem. And if it would have left unattended by about another month, we estimated it would have caused one of the biggest explosions that have ever been recorded in the U.S. at a refinery. That we prevented that, and that would have not just taken down 60% of the facility's production, so millions and millions of dollars for who knows how long, but it would have killed people. It would have caused an environmental catastrophe that would have been just horrible as it relates to the numbers. It's crazy we live in a world where that could happen, and you could go to work and potentially lose your life. That shouldn't exist. And then another example is there was a company in the energy sector whose people who were gathering information by hand were reporting that certain tanks were beyond repair and they needed to spend hundreds of millions of dollars repairing. And then we came in and determined that actually what they were being told about things that were broken was actually untrue. I think that happens a lot. And I think this is one of those things where we talk about how much we have to spend on infrastructure, and maybe we do, but I also believe that if you are uninformed by data, it's the blind leading the blind. And at worst, it is the people that are incentivized to spend a lot that are leading the blind. And that's typically what you get, whether it's in government or in private industry. So data is required. It is necessary to ensure that we're operating with high amounts of trust. If you want to talk about governance and decision making, data is the high fidelity data is the way to accomplish that. So that's the world I want to live in.
people have very much, of course, embraced the idea that AI is going to be a game-changing technology, but there's still a lot of gaps on how do we actually deploy it, use it, integrate it, things like that. In your mind, what is the main thing, the number one thing that leaders in the government, maybe even civil society, what do they need to know about data collection that is going to be key as we sort of look at tackling some of these problems?
It's a good question. Whenever someone talks about the impact that artificial intelligence will have and is having on your company or your sector, or in general, just how they blanketly use the term AI does X, Y, Z, I want to empower whoever is listening to ask the follow-up question: what is behind the engine that you're saying is delivering all this impact? What is behind your AI? Is there something there I should trust? What is it being fed on? If you aren't feeding any sort of optimization engine, or you can call it AI, if you aren't feeding it the protein it needs to be able to do its job, it will not. It is going to spit out wrong information, and you're going to be sold a packet of goods that is going to leave you wanting, and it's going to leave you frustrated, just like the promise of digital transformation the last 10 years in the industrial sectors, for example. They've been burned time and time again by companies that me and you know are household names. This is going to happen again and again. The question you have to ask is, what is the fidelity of the data? Where are you getting it? And why should I trust your data? I think this is exactly what's happening right now in lawsuits on some of the biggest AI companies in the world out there. And I hear time and time again from customers that I don't trust the promise of AI because it just hasn't moved any needle worth a damn. And so, it's a question I'm excited to ask because I know where my data comes from.
You talked a little bit about the idea that led to Gecko Robotics, but a lot of people were in that class with you. A lot of people also visited the place where you stood in that place, and not all of them started a robotics startup, right? What made you feel like, hey, not only is there a really compelling problem to solve here, but I'm the guy who needs to do it. I need to do it now. What did that?
Yeah, well, funny enough, I actually was, there wasn't a lot of people that were standing in the room. And this was, it's a power plant boiler. I mean, like I'm 34 years old. Like what younger engineers, like, excited to go work in the power sector? Like, not many, right? Which is part of the problem. So I got to stand in a place that not many people stand. And I was so thankful for that because I got to see something that was in desperate need of technology, and the merging of the hardware and the software realm that has just been ignored or misunderstood by my Silicon Valley peers. And it was, and I had to test this resolve by going completely broke by bootstrapping the company. So, I was just so compelled by trying to solve a problem that seemed really important. It didn't matter if I went broke. And so I did. I had like $100 to my name before someone offered an acquisition. And then this group called Y Combinator gave me a first check back in 2016 to continue the vision. I turned down the acquisition. That was like a pretty substantial amount, for a broke kid, because it was just like, it's too important of a problem to not go solve. And then, you begin to see like the kind of impacts that Gecko's having now. And, it's just, I'm just very privileged to be able to work on a problem like this for a type of client that's just been ignored. It's selling something that can actually help them and work alongside them to build the best technology in the world. And that is damn motivating. And it's something that is very unique, actually, to Gecko.
Let's talk a little bit about the bootstrapping process, right? You worked a little bit, some long days to do that. Can you tell us about that? What did you do to earn that money to make sure that you could build your little stockpile, your war chest?
Yeah, well, whenever you're building a company, there is you got to be kind of a little bit crazy, I think, to endure like the kind of ups and downs that come with it. So the darkest days are just like the days when you're just like curled up crying about like I can't believe this is my life right now, soldering in a dirty environment with weld shards like streaming down my back, and a hard hat and steel-toe boots, and you're just covered in soot. And it's just horrible. So my experience might be not the same as a lot of founders, but anyway, I think like you begin to like question like what the heck am I doing? Why am I in my situation why am I putting myself in the situation I'm in? Especially like you know I'm an engineer. Things could be a little easier, and I think it's what you learn from that is the thing you probably learned growing up, and it's like you know what, do the hard things. The hard things will refine who you are. It will help you become a better version of the person that you always believed you could be and want to be. And that's inspiring. It's like you do things that are bigger, you feel like are bigger than yourself. You go through the uncomfortable stuff, believing in a thing that maybe like a lot of people don't agree with you on, but you have high convictions on, for like a good reason. And then you have like some really awesome people that just give you that little encouragement that you need to keep going. And maybe you can build something like quite incredible that changes the world in a really impactful way. And that's like, man, that's worth the risk. That was the things that like kept me going, I think, for the early days. And then I think at Gecko has literally the best employees in the world. I mean, there's a 0.08% acceptance rate of the company. It's like crazy to get in. So I think that's also very motivating now. It's like you get to work on the most important problems, I think, facing our world, very existential, with the best people in the world that are all doing it because they want to work on really important problems. Because they could definitely make more money somewhere else. And I think that's a very unique culture.
And how many hours a week were you working when you were trying to save that nest egg?
Yeah, let's get into that. Yeah, I mean, I don't think there was a time that I wasn't working opposed to like maybe sleeping 4 or 5 hours a night. Yeah. So like 7 days a week, 4 or 5 hours of sleep at night. My girlfriend, not wife at the time, like our dates would be like, soldering in the lab. So yeah, so like it was a lot of work for, 5 or 6 years. I get a little bit more sleep now, but I really enjoy building this company, and it's really important work.
And how much were you able to save doing that over that period of time?
I mean, I probably had saved up like $30,000, and yeah, that went away pretty fast over the course of 3 years building robots. And then I got a couple of customers to pay me some good amounts that just like reinvested back into the company. So maybe like 50 to 60,000 like in the early days. And then the first check was like, it was 120,000. And I was like, this is so much money. So now we've raised like 250 at this point now, and million that is. And the company's over 350, something like that, and doubling size this year. So anyway, it's been an exciting journey, but a lot of ups and downs in the roller coaster.
So many entrepreneurs, they get started because they innovate, building off of a strength they already have, right? So in this case, I'm going to throw something out and assume it's hard work, right? You're not afraid of long hours, right? But that's not sustainable over time. CEOs have to prioritize. They have to also manage their energy. How do you work differently now than you did at the beginning?
Yeah, so just like for the audience, like I'm a father of 4 kids, and I love my kids. Like I love spending time with them, and I love my family. And I think one of the hacks I've found is like a lot of times you kind of want to distance like family and work. I've actually tried the reverse. Maybe it'll not backfire in my face or something, but I homeschool the kids. I take them to the different offices with my wife. We do school. The kids do school during like the days, and then I'm working. And so and I believe in like in office as well. And so hard to build robots remotely. I think like a lot of times you like get into like a mimetic routine or a mimetic way of thinking where it's like, the family should look like this, and so I should make it look like that, and I need like all this like hired help and all this kind of stuff. I think it's like really useful to think about like how can I reimagine like what this all looks like, and still make it work.
So you're not compartmentalizing, right? Your family your kids can be educated at work, really, like within
totally. I bring them to work.
Yeah.
Even my 3-year-old. Yeah. That's always fun.
And is there a piece of advice that you've learned that you've really been grateful for that's been shaping?
Yes. I think it's really important for founders to lead this trait by example, but for anyone who's leading anybody in any capacity at work, it's I think it's this idea of like being hands off and protecting the people that you lead, protecting as it relates to just like, oh, I don't want to cause undue burden, or I don't want to stretch people outside the comfort zones, is an interesting trait, and in some leaders that I've found to be very repulsive. Actually, it's like, I think the most incredible thing you can do, um, is to help someone feel like they are a part of this like wild journey, that that they get to be a part of this like story, opposed to the task taker, that is some cog in a wheel. And you can't ever feel like you're a part of the journey unless you go through some of the pain too. There's this amazing thing in like culture where it's like sacrifice is like actually quite important. Renee Girard talks about this. It's really important for cultures to understand a relationship with sacrifice, and it helps things mean more, all that kind of stuff. So I think it's important that, you know, you do this in a way with like high amounts of empathy as well, but it's important for people to feel like, no, it's your time. Step up, um, get uncomfortable, and try not to pursue the thing that, um, might look really good on a TikTok or Instagram video as it relates to like what life bliss should look like. I actually think it's like the people who can think very counter to that sort of narrative, of like being on a beach and sipping some, mojito or something. It's like, yeah, the people who I'm most like inspired by are not those types of people. They're the ones that are like building the future. They're helping people, even if it means like you have to be uncomfortable. So yeah, I mean that's probably the advice I'd give.
Yeah, get comfortable making other people uncomfortable, which is helpful. And our last question, sir. We're here, leaders from all different sectors all around the world. If there was one thing that you'd like them to prioritize this year, maybe also within the technology and AI space or robotics, what's the one thing that you want them to prioritize in 2025?
Data responsibility. Prioritize that. If AI will impact the world like I think it will, if there is not an interrogation of what is the fuel that's going into the engine, it could lead to some pretty catastrophic, accidents. And so, that's probably what I'd emphasize is, ask that question. What is your AI? What is the fuel to the AI engines, that you're putting in? And I think the highest fidelity data, companies, that can also leverage that data into useful outcomes, business outcomes, for customers, will dominate the next decade.
Thanks so much, Jake. And thanks so much to all of our viewers and our listeners. For more video podcasts, check out the World Economic Forum's YouTube page. And for more podcasts, go to wef.ch/podcasts.